Hi, everybody. It's great to see you. If you want to turn your cameras on, we would love to have your cameras on. This is a little smaller room than Tuesday, so it's a little bit more intimate. As you know, this is a power hour. That means there's no script. There's no script, there's no agenda. Our whole purpose is just to hang out with each other and ask questions and share and just leave feeling like this was an awesome night, feeling empowered and feeling that you have got some great info that is going to support you in what you're doing. So let's do a little favor. First of all, uh, introduce yourselves in the room. Where are you joining from? And what's your role? Parent, teacher, interpreter, audiologist? Kind of share who is in the room with us tonight. Great to see you, Gabriella. All right, we've got Gabriella from Idaho, and
How do you do that?
Denise is from Alabama. And just so everybody knows, feel free to check your mute buttons. We'll keep you muted. But this is an opportunity. You will have an opportunity to chat, chime in. It's just for, people for the recording's sake, where it gets a little tricky if you're not muted and then dog barks or
Mhm.
something happens, then it gets a little bit. You've seen it. It gets a little bit complicated. Okay, so Julie's joining from Northern California, and Deirdre is here from California also. And Deirdre is a parent. We're super excited to have you here with us, Deirdre. And Margie is here from New York. And Katie is here from New Hampshire. I love it. We're really representing tonight. Oh, and Robin is here and she has a hearing loss. So you're going to be, yeah, I can't wait to see what your questions are going to be, Robin. I love it. Okay. Thanks everybody for putting in the chat. And this room is our members room. So hopefully you will starting to see some familiar faces. And feel free to reach out to each other, say a special hello, ask a question, just kind of feel free to get better acquainted. Anybody, if you are signed up to go on our conference cruise or planning on signing up, put that in the chat too, because we are getting all kinds of people signing up for that. And it's fun for those of you who are joining to kind of get to know the people who you're going to be on the boat with. So, okay. I'm letting people into the room. Here we go, everybody. Questions for you. If you could have one or two things answered for you tonight before you leave, what are those questions? What do you really hope to learn, hear about, or get answered tonight? Go ahead and put that in the chat for us. That will help us guide our conversation and make sure that we don't miss anything. For those of you who just joined, welcome. So glad you guys could make it. And if you're just coming just because you don't even know what your questions are, you don't know what you don't know, and you're just here to learn, then that's fine too. Let us know that. All right, so we've got a question in the chat, how to set up students in the classroom or when they get Auracast as part of their new aids. You are in the right room. Great
That's
question.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. As questions pop up for you, feel free to put them in the chat. Oh, another fantastic question. I love this. What should I be asking my kiddo's audiologist to make sure we always have the newest tech? And is switching hearing aid brands difficult for the child? Another great question.
I love that one.
Yeah. What is the best way for a middle school to access auditory instruction when they do not want to use technology?
That's
That
a
is
tough one. Yep.
a tough one. That was middle schoolers. All right. We've got, I know this is technology. I know the technology is becoming standard and I need information for when families ask me. Absolutely. And actually, yeah, you probably want to be the one who, it would be wonderful if you were the one who was sharing it out with families. I love the question about what do we ask the audiologist because that is such an important question. People don't know what they don't know. We don't know what to ask. So this
Mhm.
is really a great. All right. I love it. Okay. So feel free to keep that stuff coming in the chat.
Yeah.
And again, we've got a special guest. This doesn't always happen, but I have been chatting with Dawn. We've been chatting about our joint efforts for for the children in Mexico, and we have been just talking about the technology and what's happening. And I said, Dawn, I would just love if you could just share this stuff with our community. And she was all about it. She's like, absolutely, let's
Yeah.
do this. And Dawn's amazing to connect with because she is oh boy, director of pediatrics. Did I get the right title? Okay,
Well,
director of
sure.
yep.
Yeah. Senior manager, director, same thing.
Okay. Senior manager, director of pediatrics of Oticon. But prior to being with Oticon, she was with Phonak. So she knows Phonak. She knows kids. This is something that is really important because a lot of audiologists are not necessarily, their niche isn't kids. Their niche is more the older population. And honestly, it's different. It's different. Our kids have different needs. So I'm just absolutely thrilled that Dawn is here. And I am not going to steal your thunder any further, Dawn. I'm going to hand it over to you, just to kind of introduce yourself, and then we can kind of open up the Q&A session and see where it takes us.
Perfect. I love that. First off, Stephanie, thank you so much for allowing me to come on. Really enjoyed getting to know you and your mission and all of your fantastic resources that you have on your website. So I've been sort of shouting your praises from the rooftops to people that I talk to because I was so surprised that I was not familiar with your mission and your website because I have been a pediatric audiologist for 22 years. So I started actually practicing in the field in the suburbs of Chicago. So I started my career at Sertoma Speech and Hearing Center in Romeoville, Illinois, if anyone's familiar with that area. And so I worked there for about 5 years. And in that role, I was a pediatric audiologist, but also their educational audiologist. So I was lucky to sort of be both providers, which is really rare to be able to see the families and help, get their hearing devices, but then also support them with their school devices. So I learned a lot about FM back in the day. So it's actually, DM, digital modulation now, but learned a lot about FM and devices in the schools and the life of a hearing itinerant. We worked really closely with our hearing itinerants in like Indian Prairie 204 was a favorite district, Naperville 203, Valley View, and Romeoville. So generated a lot of really good understanding and relationships in that world, years ago when I started my career. And then I was sort of recruited by Phonak. So I joined Phonak in 2009, and I was a pediatric account manager for 7 years. And in that area, I was mainly in the South Central, sort of Midwest area. And then I transitioned into the director of pediatrics and did that for almost 6 years. So covered the entire United States. So really got an awesome opportunity to go into all the children's hospitals, all schools, and really understand, how things work in different regions. Then I stepped away from industry for a little bit and did a little bit of private practice work. So I got real interested in kids with normal hearing that struggle with, hearing loss, but have typical hearing. So thinking of auditory processing, children with autism. So I spent about a year educating other professionals. So occupational therapists, pediatricians, speech language with their therapists about, what are these typical hearing kids and what are their struggles and how can we help them? So I loved that. And then I had the opportunity to get into this role. So now I'm the senior manager of pediatrics at Oticon. So again, I cover the entire United States. So that's a lot of fun to travel quite a bit, all coasts from the East Coast to the West Coast and everything in between. And I manage 4 account managers. So there's 4 that cover the entire US. So their territories are quite large, 7 to 17 states that each of them cover. And so mainly we focus on educating audiologists in children's hospitals and audiologists in ANTODs and any type of school personnel on remote microphones in schools. Um, so that's really my professional background. Personally, I'm based in Elizabeth, Colorado, if anyone knows where that is. It's about an hour-ish southeast of Denver. We live in a nice rural area where I joke that we have traffic jams that are turkeys or deer, so it's kind of nice, but still a quick jaunt to the airport. It's about 45 minutes. So and then my family, I am married, I have a husband, and we have 6-year-old twins. So boy-girl twins that are in first grade. So that's always a lot of fun and keeps me on my toes and super busy. So
I love
that's
it.
me in a nutshell. So again, thanks everyone for joining. And I love all the questions that you typed in the box, and I will be sure to definitely get to all of those questions. Really, the topic of why we came here was, I didn't want to talk everything about Oticon, right? I think somebody asked that on Tuesday. Is it all going to be about Oticon? And I wanted to make sure that that's not the case. That's not why we're here. I wanted to talk specifically about Auracast, and that's not related only to Oticon. And somebody did ask the question, are there other hearing aid manufacturers that have Auracast in their hearing aids? And the answer is yes. So Oticon, in addition to Resound, in addition to, I think Starkey is now releasing some with Auracast, cochlear implants. So Cochlear brand has Auracast. So with Resound and Cochlear, a lot of your students might have, a bimodal solution, and both of those devices do have Auracast available. So, does anybody know what Auracast is? Is this a buzzword you've heard? Are you super familiar or completely unfamiliar? And the reason you're here is to understand what this new technology is, which I'm assuming probably is the case. Because to be honest, if our hearing aids didn't have Auracast, I don't know how much I would know about Auracast. So great, somebody commented totally blank. Perfect. So Auracast has been sort of we call a buzzword in audiology for the past couple of years. And the reason is because this technology has been in the works for quite a while. And so this technology is not really released from, one company. It's actually the newest version of Bluetooth. So if you're familiar with Bluetooth, which I'm sure we probably all are familiar with Bluetooth, it's been around since gosh, I think 2009 or something like that. And there is what they call the Bluetooth Special Interest Group or the Bluetooth SIG. And so this is a group that has been working on advancing this technology for years. So they've been talking about Auracast and what it is and how it's going to work, and eventually it'll be here. But I'm here to tell you that it's here. It's definitely here. Obviously, it's in our hearing aids. It's in a lot of different venues. And how it works is it's technology that not only those with hearing aids, but anybody, with typical hearing that's using a pair of Auracast headphones, or if you had Auracast earbuds, you would be able to tap into this technology. And the idea behind the technology is really to allow compatibility to audio that we've never had before. So if you're familiar with, some people like to compare it to like looping. So if you're familiar with a telecoil loop, so let's say a church was looped, right? There would be a telecoil, like a wire that they have put around the room to make it accessible. And somebody with a T-coil device could tap into that technology. And that's essentially what this is, just a modern version of it. Instead of using, a telecoil loop wire, now it's going to be, an Auracast transmitter. So let's use the church as an example again. So let's say they have a sound field, system in their church, in their auditorium, and there's a microphone system. What you're able to do now is take an Auracast transmitter, and there's all different types and sizes. And, I'd encourage you to look on Amazon because there's all different ones. Type in Auracast and you'll see all these things. So what they can do is buy this little transmitter or box, and that's going to plug into their existing sound system. So what happens now that they have this box, they're now transmitting this Auracast Bluetooth signal. Historically, Bluetooth has really been, a one-to-one connection, right? So when we have our AirPods, we connect to our phone. And then maybe, if we want to switch the phone, then it will go to, a different device. So it's really a one-to-one connection historically with Bluetooth. What Auracast will do is allow us to connect one to many. So in this church example, with now they have this Auracast box, this transmitter, anybody with an Auracast compatible device. So again, it can be headphones, AirPods, different cell phones. So let's use the cell phone for an example. So let's say now I'm wearing the new Oticon Intent hearing aids. So I can go into my companion app on my phone and then click on the Auracast button, and it will automatically find that signal. And then I select it on my phone. Like that's the signal I want to listen to. So once I select that, you're just connecting, just like you do with the Bluetooth signal. And now that transmission from the church sound system is going directly into your devices. So again, what's cool about that is it could be hearing aids or, any type of device. Another really cool application that I think is fun is, think about today if you were traveling on an airplane with, let's say, your spouse. So you guys get to go on vacation and you want to maybe watch a movie together. How would you do that today with typical hearing? Maybe you'd each wear one of your wired earbuds, right? So you got one in one ear and one in your spouse's ear, and you're kind of wired together because you want to hear the same thing. What Auracast would allow you to do is to have each of your own earbuds and then connect into that same signal, that movie that you wanted to watch. So you can broadcast an Auracast broadcast signal to many, many, many devices. But I think this is
Donna,
also, yeah, go ahead.
can I just mention when I first heard about Auracast a couple of years ago, it was described like if you're in a restaurant and there's multiple TVs, you know
Yeah,
how they have like multiple sports games, then you
yep,
can choose which game you want to be able to connect to, and
yep,
multiple people can all be watching that same game
yep.
throughout the restaurant. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Or, another airport example that people like to use is, everyone knows the sound quality of like, you're at gate A34 and blah, blah, we're boarding, blah, blah. You're like, wait, what? I didn't hear any of that. The sound quality is really, poor in airports. And so you could connect into the Auracast signal at that specific gate and have all of those announcements go directly into your hearing aids or your AirPods or whatever. So really making the sound quality, more accessible. But another situation that applies to us in, what we do as, teachers of the deaf and audiologists is, this is going to be a game changer for the classroom. When we think about today, when you're thinking about, FM, we try to not use that technology term anymore because that was discontinued in 2013. But, the digital modulation, remote microphone technology, we think about what that looks like today. I'm sure you have so many frustrations between each company having a proprietary microphone, right? We do it. We have Oticon has an edge mic, that looks like this. This is our edge mic. And then you have maybe a cochlear implant that has a mini mic. And then maybe you have a phonak hearing aid that uses a Roger system. And so all these companies have their own technologies. And, not that we don't play nice together, it's just very proprietary, right? So if you have a situation where there's, excuse me, several kids using remote microphones, there's ways that you can connect them in, or you have a teacher, that looks like, their lanyard is connected with all these different microphones. And that can be, frustrating. So Auracast is going to change the game for all of that, meaning everything that has Auracast in it will be compatible. So going forward in the future, there will be an Auracast microphone and it will be universal, and that will transmit to any Auracast cochlear implant, any Auracast hearing aid. And that's really the future. And, when we think about hearing aids today, because I know your question is going to be, some hearing aids have Auracast compatibility and some don't, right? Like, how are we going to manage that? And we're certainly going to be in this time frame where we're using the old technology and we're using the new technology. But we will get to a place, I'm confident, that most devices will be have Auracast in them. And it's exciting for me working at Oticon that we have this, because when I think about students getting hearing aids, your students tend to have that model of hearing aids for at least 5 years, if not more, right? And the reason for most of that is because the warranty of the device is 5 years, right? And so we're pretty confident that most kids are going to use the same technology for the next 5 years. And so when I think about what that means today, is any kid getting, a hearing aid, new devices today, they're not going to get a new device till 2031. That sounds really far away. That's 5 years from now, right? So we want to make sure that what they're getting today has the technology in it that will be compatible with what's happening. And, is Auracast widely available in schools today? No, it's not. However, will it be in 6 months or a year or even 3 years? I think I'm confident that it will be, because I know there's, systems that have Auracast in it today. So that's something that I think is important to talk to your families about is, is the devices that you're choosing for your child, is it future ready? Is it future compatible? Does it have this technology in it? I want to pause there for a second and just see if there's any specific questions on that.
Yeah, there's some great questions in the chat, Dawn.
Yeah.
So first of all, a real quick clarification going back to where you can share device, you can both be plugged in and watching the same movie on the airplane, as your example. One of
Mhm.
the questions was, does that mean other people can tune in to that movie on the airplane and that you lose your privacy for what you're listening to?
Yeah. No, so you can make it an Auracast open signal, or you can password protect it. So kind of your choice. If you wanted to share your movie, then you don't password protect it. But if you don't want to share it, then you would put a password on it.
So this was a really interesting comment from Deirdre, who's a parent here.
Yeah.
And she said that it seems that there is a disincentive to have Auracast for the hearing aid companies because that means that they can't sell the proprietary mics.
hmm
What are your thoughts on that?
Um, That's a tough one because for us, that's not the situation that we're in. Um, we really, really want to focus on the future and what's compatible. So, I think one of the reasons why I'm really proud to work for Oticon is that, the decisions aren't necessarily based on revenue or selling, or, it's really based on what's the right thing for the patient. And knowing, what the future holds and, being part of that technology is important. Some companies have decided to not go that direction and they're continuing with Bluetooth Classic. Bluetooth Classic is a signal that's been around since about 2009, if not earlier. And so, when we think about the sound quality and we know that's really important for our kids, specifically streaming. They stream so much stuff, right? Music, movies, how it sounds is really important. And LE audio is kind of the first step before Auracast, right? So it's Bluetooth Classic, LE audio, and then Auracast. and we've had LE audio for a little bit. So we're really, focused on the sound quality and connectivity, not necessarily, focusing on the proprietary mics anymore.
So that brings up a good question, and I think that one of the things that I've been really struck with is first of all that this is the new Bluetooth. So this isn't like the direction that some hearing aids are going. This is the direction that the world is going.
The world,
So
yeah.
in the future, so for any hearing aid company who's not hopping on that bandwagon, they will. It's just a matter of time because this isn't just about hearing aids. This is going to be about earbuds. This is going to
Yeah.
be about any wireless signal. But I do remember when Bluetooth became popular, and I shared this on Tuesday night, I struggled when I got my students with their hearing aids. It was they could either have the DM system or they could have Bluetooth. It was like they had to choose one or the other. And
Mhm.
then some hearing aid models came out that you could have both. So I think
Mhm.
there's a question. Is there going to be this transition? Is it going to be one of those where you have to choose one or the other, or are there going to will there be the technology out there that allows people to have that transition depending on what technology is in the room with them?
Yeah, for sure. So with Oticon, the hearing aids that have Auracast, we have all the connectivity of Bluetooth with the LE audio. So if they're not connecting to an Auracast broadcast, they can connect via Bluetooth to anything that they want to connect to. And I think that will be that case for a long time, right? So, the Auracast broadcast signals are going to be in places that we talked about, right? Like large museums, churches, airports, things like that, classrooms, etc. But if you're just trying to connect to your device to stream, that's still going to be available via, Bluetooth LE audio for sure.
And I have seen that there will be a device that you can wear that will kind of be that. I'm trying to remember what the technology was prior to having Bluetooth. Like you could make your device Auracast if it's not. It takes that Bluetooth and it translates it into Auracast and then it creates that for you. So I know that that is, if it's not on the market yet, it will be for people who are not who don't have the Auracast technology yet, but they would benefit from it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. So
so
I want to
there's,
comment on that just real quick.
yeah,
So again, about Amazon, I'm sure we all, and maybe not everyone is as obsessed with Amazon as I am, but I do all my shopping on Amazon. And I found an Auracast little transmitter. I mean, it was like this big, for $50. And so I can plug that into my TV. I can plug it into my computer. I streamed with my phone. Yeah, so super
okay,
easy to set up, really affordable. And then what this one was actually, you could go back and forth between Auracast and Bluetooth. So that was kind of cool too. So
that's great to know. So other people
technology
could
is
find that
here.
just on Amazon.
Yeah, here and affordable.
Love it. Okay, so there is a couple questions. One is, will you be able to control the sensitivity? How and what else you hear? So if you're plugged into Auracast, can you also hear the conversations that's going on around you, or
hmm
is it you can only hear what's in the Auracast?
No, yeah, with Oticon, you can adjust that on your app. So you can adjust the sensitivity of your microphones. If you didn't want to hear other things, you could actually mute your microphones so that you're only hearing the Auracast broadcast signal, similar to, streaming music. You can do the same thing. Excuse me. So with the app, you have the capability to make the changes that you want.
Love it. So this
Yeah.
is Julie put this in the chat, and I'm sure it's on everybody's minds. So here we have a student in the room. They've got Auracast their hearing aids. What's the next step to make sure that they are set in the classroom to make sure that they can utilize it?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what we're trying to connect to. So again, let's say you have an Oticon intent hearing aid. Are we wanting to listen to the teacher through a microphone? Um, because right now, the only Auracast microphone that I have experience with is the Simeon Audita. It's Audita Audita 3 is a sound field system. So it's a sound field speaker and a microphone, and it actually has two microphones that has Auracast capability. So if you had that system in the classroom, then the student could connect into that Auracast broadcast in addition to hearing that sound field system. So today, that's the only sound field that I'm aware of that has that technology in it. So that would be sort of the ideal setup. Otherwise, if you were trying to connect them with the Auracast to, let's say the smart board, if they're watching, a video or whatever, it could be that same thing that I just talked about, that $50 little adapter that you would just plug into whatever media. So if it's the, teacher connecting the smart board into their computer, then it'd probably be that audio out. You would connect that Auracast transmitter into it, and then it would just transmit the sound from the computer smart board setup directly into the child's hearing aids.
So, am I understanding that as this technology grows, you basically need kind of a sound field system, and the teachers will still be wearing a mic? So, we'll still be needing to have the microphone passed to other students to be able to gain that direct access.
Yeah, but I think what's going to happen is that these microphones, right, how, all the different ones that we talked about will transition into an Auracast microphone. So let's say Oticon has one, then it would be, an Oticon Auracast transmitter that the teacher would wear, just like they do today with an edge mic or a multi-mic or a phonak system. The teacher would wear that Auracast microphone, and it would work just as the typical technology that you're used to today functions, sending that signal, that Auracast signal, directly to all the Auracast enabled devices. So you can kind of think of it as like changing from DM to Auracast broadcast. Same idea, different technology.
Is the quality of the sound different with
Better.
Auracast? Better.
Better.
Okay.
Yes.
And
I've
then
had a chance to listen to it. It sounds fantastic.
that is really fun. Okay, I was just thinking maybe we'll have to have some kind of, well, okay. The audiologists, I'm assuming most audiologists in people's areas have this technology available that if we wanted to go and get a demo of it, we would somehow be able to listen to that, or is that hard to come by
I
at
would
this point?
say it's an emerging technology. I don't know that most audiologists have the capability to demo it. We do. So this is kind of a nice plug that if you want to share with your audiologist, but upcoming starting in April, we're going to be doing some in-person regional trainings where we have what they call a clang, if you've ever heard that word. It's called a clang finder. And it's a head that allows you to put hearing aids into it. And then 6 pairs of headphones are attached to it. So then you can wear the headphones and then you can listen to the technology. So we're going to be doing a demo of Auracast, how hearing aids sound, and several other cool sort of demos. I was going to talk a little bit about one of these in a minute, but essentially how you can connect different technologies to like gaming systems and letting people hear how all of that technology works. So we will be demoing that in all of our trainings. So if you want to share that with audiologists in your area, that's coming up starting in April.
Great. Distance. What's the distance that you get with the transmitters?
Yeah, so with Auracast, the distance is going to be more so than we're used to today with digital modulation systems, which tend to be around 60 to 80 feet. So I've heard 300 feet with Auracast, as far as, as far as it could transmit. Um, that's, kind of what a spec sheet says, but, I think it depends on the environment and, what kind of walls we're talking about and things like that. But the transmission distance will be further than what we're used to today.
Okay, more great questions in the chat, and you guys are fantastic.
I love it. Keep it
Um,
going.
I love it. Yes. is this Auracast option going to be an automatic addition, or is this an option that people have?
So in our hearing aids, the Oticon Intent and Oticon Zeal, as of today, have Auracast just built into it. So it's nothing you have to ask for or an upgrade. It's just included in all of our models of those types of hearing aids.
Now, everybody, she mentioned the Zeal. I know I mentioned this briefly on Tuesday. Um, can you show us? I mean, this is
Yeah.
this is the top end hearing aid. So just so you guys see what's here
So
though.
this is the
Um,
case. I don't know how good you can, there we go. You can see that there.
Here we go. Yep.
So I'm going to take it out and show you. So
Now I
that's how
had her put it
it
up by
is.
her little pinky because I couldn't even tell when she had it in her hand. I wanted to see how big it was. So, all right. So it's kind of like the tip of your pinky here.
If you can see that, yep. Try to do different angles. It's tiny. It's the smallest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Now that all goes in the ear. What stays out. You can show us this, right?
Huh?
I fell off my chair when you showed this to me the other day.
Yeah, let me put the right one in so I can lean in this way.
Now while she's putting that in, um, Dawn, correct me if I'm wrong. This is for this is not. Oh, do you see how small that is? You can't even see it's in her ear. It just is like the black, just looks like her ear canal. Now, moderate. That is not a hearing aid for severe, profound hearing losses. It's true.
Correct, yeah. So it's a 75 dB fitting range. So, think thresholds in the anywhere from, typical hearing down to moderate severe-ish.
And not
So,
for the littles. This has not been approved for the littles, but for your older students and for adults.
yeah, like we're really excited to see what does the teen population think of this, right? Like I think of kids that have completely abandoned their hearing technology. So think of the kids that are, real self-conscious and they don't want anything behind their ears, something really small that goes in the ear. I think this is a really fantastic option. So people keep asking me like, well, what age? And it's like, well, you kind of have to use the same criteria you would for, a receiver in the ear, right? So not for the littles, you want somebody to be responsible because it is so small. Like you have to, clean that end, you have to change out the domes, you have to really take care of it. So, we want to make sure that that child has that capability. So, I think of like 12 is where I would start feeling comfortable that, they know what they're doing, they're responsible. Um, but there's some 12-year-olds that are not very responsible. So, I think you have to take that into account too.
So really kind of that age, there was a question earlier about the kids. Oh, what do we do with the kids that aren't wanting to wear hearing aids that are really fighting back against that? Now, Dawn, those hearing aids, those are the small, there's another company that just came out, I think, are those the smallest on the market right now?
Yeah, so you might be
Okay.
thinking of the Resound Silk. Is that what you're going to
That is
say?
exactly what I'm thinking of. Yes.
So the difference with these is that so you see this little dome on here, right? So you can choose different dome sizes, but you can make it a custom piece as well. So if you wanted to do an ear mold impression and make a custom ear mold on here, you can. Um, and then what's also different is that this is sort of a new technology called encapsulation. So this isn't a custom or kind of like first fit device. They're really classifying it as a whole new category because of this encapsulation. So you're not taking an ear mold impression and building a custom device. It's essentially off the shelf, but you can make it custom with that earpiece. So that's kind of nice for, a practice that wants to, they could fit it that day and then let them wear it and see what they think. And if they wanted to do an impression, they could and, come back and fit it custom wise. But this encapsulation technology is what's different than anything on the market. And how it's so small and rechargeable and all of that is because of this material that they're able to essentially pour onto the device. It's the same material that they use in spacecrafts, I learned. So that's kind of fun. So super durable. We're expecting a 5-year battery life out of this, 5-year warranty for kids. So all of the same technology that's built into the Oticon Intent devices. So the AI, the DNN, the connectivity, the rechargeability, all of it just built into a tiny, tiny little package. And this piece right here, if you can see, there's an antenna on here, and that's the part that sort of lays into the concha bowl of the ear. So this is the part, and it acts as a retention piece too. So retention and then a pull string. So it allows you to help grab it and pull it out of the ear. So many sort of uses for this piece right here. But this is the antenna that allows the connectivity to, Bluetooth and all the things. You could connect an edge mic to this. So even though the kid wants this really small device, you could still have the teacher wearing a remote microphone. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I love that. And that not only that one, but all of the current hearing aids right now are coming out with the AI technology.
Mhm.
Listening. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So AI is a big term, right? So at Oticon, we have the deep neural network. And really what that means is that, it's a fancy term for we've done a lot of work in research and development to help the hearing aids understand what is speech and what is noise. So they've taken a lot of time and done 12 million sound scenes across all these different channels and environments to help the hearing aids be better at classifying what is speech and what is noise, and how can we really focus on that speech. And then within our hearing aids, we have sensors. They're called 4D sensors or four-dimensional sensors. And so it uses other things like head movement, body movement, conversation activity to understand what is the environment like. So I think that's cool when you think of, maybe a kid in the cafeteria. We hear that the cafeteria is one of the worst environments for our kiddos, right? The hardest to hear. So with the intent hearing aids, with the 4D sensors, they're looking around at the environment and understanding, is the kid walking? So it's understanding like, are they moving? Are they turning back and forth to talk to a friend? Are they, really sort of stationary and really looking towards one friend? And based on all of that, it's changing how much noise reduction are they doing in the hearing aids. So, meaning if you're trying to sit with one friend and looking intently at them, then you really want to focus on that one person, right? So, I'm not talking about directionality, I'm talking about reducing the background noise, right? So that we can hear that person. But if you're walking and the hearing aids know that you're en route to go get your cafeteria tray and you're moving, you want to have more awareness of the environment, right? You want to know what's happening. So there's a little bit less noise reduction so that we can have full awareness of the environment. So I think that's really cool that the hearing aids can, make adjustments not just based on, the sound environment, but actually what the child's doing themselves. So I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you. All right, I'm keeping my eye on the time, and I want to go back to some of those questions that were posted in the chat at the very opening, and let's some of these we haven't addressed yet, and they are really
Yeah.
good. So, question number one, what questions should parents be asking audiologists to make sure that they're getting the hearing aids that have the newest, best tech? And then question number two, is it difficult to switch brands? If you're used to one brand and you have a new brand, is that hard on the brain?
Yeah, for sure. So the first one is what's new isn't always better. So that was my first thing is to think, just because it's the brand new thing doesn't mean that it's better. So I would encourage a parent to ask their audiologist, when you're recommending a certain brand or type. Can you tell me why? What about that brand or type of hearing aid, makes you choose that? Is it that they're more comfortable with it? Is it the technology of the hearing aid? So I would ask them to tell you those types of things. What do you recommend and why? Because, we've really seen that just because something is new doesn't mean it's better than something from a different manufacturer that might be, 2 years old, because there are different philosophies. So that's a question that I would encourage a parent to ask. When we're thinking about a device, what is the philosophy or how does it work? And when I say that, I can tell you Oticon's philosophy is very different. So we take a very different approach to noise reduction, and that happened back in 2016. So the idea that Oticon did is they went towards more of an open sound scene. So a lot of our previous hearing aids from 2016 and on have the word open in it because the idea is we wanted to give the brain access to how the typical brain hears sound, right? And that's having everything around us. And that's so important when we think about wiring the brain, typically for, little kids, right? When you think about a typical hearing child, how is their brain being wired? Because of all the things they're hearing, all the things they're seeing, all the things they're touching, we want to give them access to everything. If we put them in a highly directional program and get rid of all this stuff, that brain doesn't have the capability to understand and wire the brain to understand that technology. So, open sound is what's really important from an Oticon perspective, and pretty much every other hearing aid manufacturer has a different philosophy. Most of them focus directional. And, we think about kids. I talked about little babies, but think about, our middle schoolers. When they're trying to talk with their peers and they're walking to the cafeteria or getting their tray, they want to be able to hear their friends on the side of them. If one of them says, "Oh, hey, did you hear what happened in second period?" If I'm not looking at that friend, I don't want to miss that, right? So we believe in open sound really for birth through end of life. Open sound is really important to give people the access that they need. So those are a couple questions, and then that I would encourage you to ask the audiologist, and then switching brands. So that's a super interesting one, and we talk to our audiologist a lot about that because I think a lot of people think that, oh, if you were, in one brand, you shouldn't switch to a different one. I haven't found any research to support that. So there that I know of, right? So maybe there is that I'm not aware of, but I haven't found any that says, if you start with one, you should stay with that. So I think what we've seen is that kids specifically acclimatize really quickly. So we see, especially when we give them the option, and if the child is old enough to try the two, we really encourage our audiologists to try, brand A, brand B. Let the kid listen to it. What do they prefer? What do they like? Because, some kids might prefer one sound over another. And maybe, they do like the sound that they were in, or maybe something new and different, a different manufacturer is giving them access to things they've never heard before. I have a friend that switched from a different manufacturer and she had worn actually Phonak pretty much her whole life. She's actually a hearing itinerant teacher and she switched into Oticon and told me that she had never heard footsteps behind her before. So she was gaining access to things that, soft sounds in different places that she hadn't heard before, and that she really appreciates having the access to those types of sounds. So I think there's no right answer to that. I think it's just we need to give the capability of our audiologists and our families to give it a try. And if the child can tell us, that's fantastic. And, audiologists have some really cool tools, in the sound booth with speech testing and, all the great things that they do that they can test to see how are they doing with these devices. So it could be that, we have better word recognition scores with one device over the other. So I really encourage people to look into that.
Don, I love that you brought that up because, we know that there's such a difference in what you hear in a quiet soundproof booth or in the
Mhm.
audiologist's office versus
Mhm.
what it sounds like as soon as you walk out that door or you get in the car or you get in the classroom.
Yeah.
Um, do is there the opportunity for people to do like a trial? Like, can they try this brand for 2 weeks and then try another brand for 2 weeks and then be able to make their choice after that? Is that common or
Yeah.
available within most
Yes.
audiologists?
Yes, that's very common and very available. Yes.
So, in your experience, do most families get that option for kids? I don't know if I've ever had a student walk in. I personally have never walked with in or never worked with a student that said, I'm trying this type out for a couple days and now I get to try another pair out another couple days and then I get to make a choice. I've never personally had a student share that option with me. Is that known? Is that common? Like, is that a question that parents should just know to ask at the audiologist?
Yeah, I think it's more common and typical in an adult, private practice, right? When we think about, a children's hospital, it's pretty typical for them to say, I guess one of two ways. It's like, I recommend this device and here it is and pick your color. Or they'll say, here's device A, here's device B, here's some different things, maybe the price. I like this one. You can choose, pick your color, right? It's kind of a typical consultation. So it's available. I don't think that it's something that people do a lot. And, I think a really informed parent, that would be a great suggestion. Is this
Yeah.
something that I could try to see? A lot of children's hospitals have what they call loaner devices from different manufacturers. So, if they have that loaner stock and they have that, available, then I certainly think that, an audiologist would be willing to work with families on that.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, especially for our middle school and high school students who now are learning to be able to really kind of assess and problem solve and explain their preferences and their needs. I think that is something that would be wonderful to share out as a teacher. I want to be able to share that out with families and say, ask your audiologist about this and see what they say, because that would be amazing. Anybody else? Has anybody had an opportunity, had a student that has come in that said, I'm just trying these and we'll see how it goes. Anybody had a student with that experience?
I
It's
actually
just
have, but I don't know if it's because our audiologist is amazing. And like we have a
Mhm.
district audiologist that talks to both the parents and then almost educates them on how to talk to their, local audiologist, if that makes sense. Like the district one versus the one where they're actually dispensing. Because
Mhm.
we have some that go to Syracuse and some that are in Utica. And I do have one this year for sure that trialed one and it did not work out. And then she went back to, I think she got an Oticon play or something. Or am I messing up Oticon versus Phonak? Sorry if
No,
I.
you got it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep. Play
good.
plus. Yeah, you got
Yeah, she went
it.
back to that and loved it. So yeah, so we trialed it, and but we're finding that unfortunately there's like such a shortage in quality audiologists that they're fitting kids like at the top end of the threshold for these devices, and you're like, there's nowhere to adjust them from here. Like, why would you fit them with this? And
Yeah.
so she's great about kind of pushing back, like this was not an appropriate fit. Send it back and give us this instead. So,
Yeah.
but it's
So
tough. There's not
somebody,
a lot of qualified people out there.
yeah. Somebody had asked you about the how does the trial work with the school proprietary mics? And so that's an interesting one because, the children's hospital where they're getting fit with the hearing aids tends to not have the remote microphones, right? So, what I would suggest in that environment is, if a child is trialing devices, work with the school, the educational audiologist, do you have, let's say, an edge mic? And if you don't, we have account managers who have, loaner devices. We could send out a loaner one that they can try. We do that pretty typically. So there's certainly options to make that happen.
Thank you. There's a great question, which I think is going to be perfect to wrap us up tonight. And that is, are there books, like children's books, that's talking about the new changes in this technology or anything like that? I know that you guys have had some really neat things for kids out there.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I haven't seen a children's book specifically on Auracast. I wonder who will be the first author to talk about Auracast. But if I can, I'll plug a book that I love, which is a friend of mine wrote
Brenda's book.
the book. So
I love that book.
we love this book. And so yeah, I love her. I love her story. So that's a great book, but I don't know anything specifically on Auracast. So maybe I'll ask Brenda if she'll write her next one on
Did
Auracast
everybody
technology.
see that? See the cover that Dawn showed? And are you familiar with this book? It's very cute. So it says, she heard her footsteps, and it is written by a deaf teacher of the deaf in the Chicago area, Brenda Schmidt. And this is her story when she was a little girl, when she got her first pair of hearing aids, and all the sounds that she heard for the very first time, her own footsteps and the rain and splashing in the puddles. And it's a really sweet, special story. And it's great to share. It's a great book share to read with classes, great for Deaf Awareness Month or Speech and Language Month, all the months. And just also great to read with your students as well. So definitely
Yeah,
want to give a good plug for that.
yeah.
Great.
Somebody had a question about the trainings I mentioned. So I do want to share my contact information. So my email is d.arts, spelled Aerts, at oticon.com. I would be happy to connect you to wherever we're having the training, to the audiologist, make sure everyone has the information. I'm telling you, you're getting a sneak peek. We haven't published any of this yet. So once we have the actual locations and dates and all the things that we'll be starting, we'd be happy to share that and see if we can have you join us.
I love it. Thank you. And again, I can't thank Dawn enough and Oticon enough for those of you who have been watching our progress updates and what's going on with the school in Cozumel. Oticon is partnering with us, and we don't have any big announcements yet, but stay tuned because I know that there will be, and just some fun things to stay up to date with. So just keep your eyes on the email and on our social medias. And I think our timing is just about perfect. I think we got everybody's questions answered tonight. Everybody, if you don't mind, let's give Dawn a thumbs up, a little love, a little round of applause. I love that here you all are on the cutting edge. You now know about Auracast more than probably anybody else. I first heard about it 2 years ago when Tina Childers said, "This is replacing Bluetooth." And I said, "What? I think we need to listen to this. This is going to be a big deal." And here it is. It's here, and it's just like Bluetooth was slow coming in, but now it's everywhere. I think that's what
Mhm.
we're going to be experiencing. So if your students don't have it yet, you are aware that it's coming. So just remember, she talked about the transmitter, Amazon, you can get that for about $50.
Mhm.
You can have or you can start getting your classrooms, get ready for the I'm not going to say the right word, but the loop system, the Auracast system, sound field
Mhm.
system. Okay.
Yep. Type that into the chat.
For the classrooms, have one. If you can, this is going to be recorded. Share it with your audiologist because it's going to be worthwhile for them to order it now, your educational audiologist, for them to order it and be ready for it because it's on its way. Next thing you know, you're going to have a student pop in with brand new hearing aids and and you're going to be like, "Oh, here it is. It's here."
Yep.
And you're going to be ready for it. So, everybody, thank you so much for joining. I love these power hours. Just an opportunity to chat, ask questions, no script, and a great opportunity just to kind of be face to face in the room where it happens, everybody. So, thank you. And a little plug for next week, Thursday, is our live bonus training. Now, this is different from the Power Hour. This is where we've got a presenter, we've got slides, and we're talking about access for our students who are deafblind and deaf with additional disabilities, and how we can create a classroom that is more accessible for them and their needs. So this is going to be fantastic. Make sure that you RSVP for it. It's included in your membership. If you have any students with additional disabilities or who have hearing and vision issues, you don't want to miss this at all. All right. Okay, everybody, take care, and we will see